Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddham dhammam sangham namasami. In case any of you are wondering about the little solo chants this evening that Anish did and Professor Dhammārāma did yesterday, the words of that are recounting the incident shortly after the Buddha's enlightenment, when he was reflecting on the insight that had arisen and his understanding, and he come to the conclusion that this was so subtle, so much against the grain of human society, so abstruse and hard to see, that there was no point in trying to explain it to anybody. And so that he, at that moment, had given up the idea of trying to teach or to convey that understanding to anyone. And then the Brahma deity, Sahampati, then picked up this thought in the mind of the newly awakened Buddha and appeared from the Brahma world in front of the Buddha and said, "Please, for the sake of those with just a little bit of dust in their eyes, please teach the Dhamma." So here we are, 2,500 years later, and very appreciative of the intervention by the Brahma Sahampati. So that is a traditional way that Dhamma teachings are requested, because the spirit of the Dhamma teaching is it's only given when asked for. You don't go around knocking on people's doors or stopping people in the street and telling them how wonderful the Buddha's teaching is, but rather it always has to be drawn forth, has to be invited to be shared. So we've been together for a day. It might feel like more than that, a year or two. But one day has passed since we gathered together, and whenever there's a retreat like this, I often like to consider on the first evening how much happens in a day. Even when we're just sitting and walking and being quiet, how many different mind states we experience, how broad the range of different moods can be when the day is surveyed in our memory. We look back and see there's a huge variety of different qualities of experience. So there have been times when we were very keen, very alert, totally focused on being the ardent meditator. Other times we were sleepy and just wanting to curl up and have a nap. Other times we were resenting the painful feeling in our legs and were kind of angry with the body for creating all this pain and just trying to make life difficult for us. Wondering when the bell's going to go and what time tea is, and so on and so forth. So these different states of mind come and go, and the usual way we think of our mind is that is a single consistent quality. It's a one thing, like my mind. We don't say my mind's, plural, right? We say my mind. But yet, if we look at just a single day like this, we can see that there's the mind which has the voice of the kind of spiritual seeker, or the rational complainer, or the kind of hungry, indulgent one that's just looking for the next thing to eat, drink, the excited child. All these different voices get say, articulated within us. So I find it's more helpful to think of the mind as a collection of people, like a committee meeting, rather than an individual. And so often you hear this kind of phrase, the inner committee, and that's giving a voice or an image to that kind of collection of different states of mind, different moods, different feelings that we experience during the course of any one day. Now, all of us are a bit different, but I would imagine that every single one of us has got that kind of variety. If we look, we consider. And so, like any of you who've ever sat on a committee or been in a board meeting, been part of a residents association discussion, your apartment building, or your street, or in your hospital, or your school, or your workplace, then you know that the way the meetings go, there's a lot of different voices around the table, and you have the ones who like to speak louder than everybody, but they've always got something to say, even if they're not quite sure what it is that they want to say. They know they want to say it. And the ones who sort of sit there quietly and just radiate their feelings, be annoyed or frustrated, but they don't say much. And the ones who are thoughtful and careful and very reasonable, the ones who are unreasonable, they're just very expressive, emotional, and give voice to mood and feeling very easily. So when I sit on I guess this is a meaningful teaching to me because I sit on a lot of committees. I'm a regular member of about 15 different committees, one kind or another. And so I have agendas of minutes that I live with. And also you can see what makes a meeting work well. And that the essential item is the chair, how the voices around the table are coordinated. So whether you're in India or whether you're in England or wherever you might be, any such meeting like this, it depends on some kind of integrative principle. So that if the meeting is chaired in a skillful way, then all of the voices are invited to speak, but they're respected and they're listened to, but a good chair will be able to receive all of the input that's being made by the different characters around the table, and then be able to bring things together in a helpful, skillful manner. So that I like to think of this in terms of mindfulness and wisdom being made the chairperson. That's what you put in the chair. So that's that faculty of our own mind, satipanya, mindfulness and wisdom. That's the quality that you make as a sort of guiding and integrating principle. Following this same kind of image, then when you're in a committee meeting, sometimes people are around the table. They probably mean well. They're trying to be helpful, but often some of the things that they say, or a lot of the things that they say, don't make much sense. Or you can tell, this person's speaking that way because they're really angry, or this is a very childish attitude. This is very infantile, and so. If you're a good chair, then even if what's being said is very childish or very reactive or very angry, then if you just say, shut up, you haven't got anything worth saying, you'll get a very tense meeting, and it's unlikely to bring anything forth that is very helpful, beneficial. But if the chair is respectful and says, thank you for sharing, and that's interesting, I haven't seen it that way before, or yes, well, I understand that you're quite upset about this, but other people are also concerned or have different things to say. So that fundamental attitude of respectfully listening to everything that arises, and then recognizing, discerning, okay, this is in accord with what is helpful, this is in accord with what is not helpful. This is meaningless, or this is something that is valuable and that's indicates a good way to proceed. So that when we are watching our minds during the course of the day, then we need that same kind of discerning satipanya at the center, so that the different moods that arise, the different feelings, the different thoughts, in a sense, regardless of their content, we have a habit of believing them or taking them seriously. But just as if you're chairing a meeting and you realize, well, okay, that made sense, but that person is really seriously biased. They've got a very fixed agenda, so that yes, I can understand what they're saying, but that's not very useful, or that's not the whole story, or they're trying to push their particular point of view. So one of the issues that we have as human beings, and why many of us struggle with our thinking, is that we have this assumption that if we think something, that it's true. And if I think it, it's true. Even if what I think now is different from what I thought 2 hours ago, I believe what I'm thinking now, and I believe what I was thinking 2 hours ago. I was right both times. And even if they contradict themselves radically, we have this habit of thinking, assuming that our thoughts are always true, always valuable. And then when we are, say, criticizing ourselves, I'm a useless person, I'm a failure, nobody loves me, those kind of things, we assume that those kind of thoughts are true. Or that I'm really somebody special, I'm kind of unique, people are really lucky to have me around. Again, we assume that those thoughts are true. And using deliberately extreme examples. But if you notice, it's a very strong habit that we have to believe our thoughts and take them to be things that are absolutely real and reliable and genuine. And I think I mentioned the bumper sticker that was popular in San Francisco Bay Area when I lived there, which was they're like philosophical bumper stickers, particularly on the West Coast. And this one read, just because you think it doesn't mean it's true. Just because you think it doesn't mean it's true. And I thought, well, that's a really helpful piece of advice. That's extremely useful to reflect on, because a lot of us create a huge amount of stress and difficulty. A lot of the causes of mental unrest and mental illness and difficult mental states arise because of obsessive thinking, or the mind judging ourselves or judging others in obsessive ways or negative ways or biased ways that don't accord with reality. And a lot of the difficulty that is, say, derived from that is because of the habit of assuming that just because we think something, it makes it true. So I like to encourage in a sense, a mindfulness of the world of thinking, sort of looking at the world of mental formations, conceptual thought, and to, in a sense, develop a quality of being suspicious or not taking it at face value. So more like regarding our thoughts like you would the advertisements. You know, that if you use this toothpaste, you'll have absolutely perfect, dazzlingly shining white teeth, and everybody will love you. You know. So, well, you'll have some toothpaste. Whether it'll make your teeth perfectly white and whether it'll make you the most popular person in the room is another story. But you'll have some toothpaste. You can be sure about that. So I don't know if any of you are in the advertising business. I apologize if I'm sounding rude, but that's what advertisements are doing. They're trying to create a particular impression. And this toothpaste is going to be a lot more effective than all the other ones that you possibly could acquire, and this is going to make a big difference in your life. So that the text that you read in an advertisement, it's meaningful. You can understand the words of it, but you don't have to take it as being something absolutely true. It's got an agenda. It's got a particular reason why it's there, and so that we are able to sort of bracket it. Oh, that's just an advert. I don't have to take it seriously. I'm not assuming that it's true. It's not telling me the whole story. Because which kind of advertisement for toothpaste would say, actually, we're pretty much the same as everybody else. Or we're not really the best, but we're not really the best. But we make ourselves seem the best by making ourselves more expensive. And no one's going to try and sell themselves in that way. So that we have, in this way, if we are developing a quality of discernment, discretion around our thinking, this can make a big difference. We can find a lot more inner spaciousness by not buying into our thoughts and judgments and opinions, and not giving them so much life or giving them so much value. There's a group of people in the UK and other countries that have developed certain meditation methods. There's a man called John Kabat-Zinn, who many of you might have heard of, who developed mindfulness-based stress reduction many years ago, back in the late 70s, in the USA, which is a very, very popular technique around the world. And it's a sort of secularized languaging of Buddhist meditation, so it's teaching meditation without using Buddhist terminology or really referencing the Buddha, making meditation available to the general population for stress reduction. And a branch of that grew up about 15 years ago is called mindfulness-based cognitive therapy. And this is a strand of meditation and sort of clinical practice that grew up particularly because there was a collection of scientists, John Teasdale, Zindel Siegel, and Mark Williams, who wanted to try and develop a meditation method or an approach using this kind of accessibility of mindfulness-based stress reduction, but particularly aimed at depression, and particularly using an approach towards our thinking. And as I was told a few years ago, it was actually when John Teasdale was listening to a Dhamma talk of Ajahn Sumedho, and he was at the Oxford University Buddhist Society giving a talk. John Teasdale was there that evening, and there was 2 points that Ajahn Sumedho made in that talk about thinking and the developing an objective and unattached attitude towards thinking. And the 2 points were that our thoughts are not true and they're not ours. And so those were 2 principles that John Teasdale took away from that talk and thought, well, maybe those are 2 key things that we can introduce or work that together with this kind of meditation practice and see if we can use that to help people deal with depression. So one of the reasons why you see mindfulness all around the world, probably in India as much as many other countries, so mindfulness programs, is because the system they developed was incredibly effective. So that they, I don't know how many, if we've got any psychiatrists in the room, but up until 2007, I think, if somebody had a recurrent experience of depression, a recurrent phase of depression, it had more than one episode of depression, the likelihood of a cure was between 5 and 10%. So 90% of people who had 2 episodes of depression would continue having those episodes, regardless of the kind of treatment, whether it was psychotherapy, psychoanalysis, surgery, medication. And every kind of treatment that had been tried over 100 years or so, nothing had been more effective than curing 10% of people. 90% could not be cured. And then this particular approach towards mind training of mindfulness-based cognitive therapy they used a way of encouraging people to look at their thoughts, the flow of their thinking, and to, in a sense, challenge the sense of this is me and mine, this is what I am, in the sense of owning, being the owner or the possessor of thought, and then secondly, challenging the content of those thoughts as, is this really true? Or who says this is a fact? Or why do I believe this? There's a challenging of the content of the thinking as well. So over, I think it's a 10-week course. It's a little bit longer than the standard MBSR course. And the reason why I mention it this evening is that I feel this is a very helpful indicator of the practical use of this kind of approach to meditation, is that they found a 50% recovery rate. So when they ran the first study in the UK, and then when they published these results, people say, oh, rubbish, this is ridiculous, you can't be 500% better than any other procedure in the last 100 years, and then they're not even using any medicine, there's no surgery, it's just this 10-week meditation course, ridiculous, this can't be true. So then they ran the study again in the USA and had exactly the same results. So that's when people started to get really interested in mindfulness. It's like, oh goodness, there's a massively positive clinical result. So people started, what is this stuff? What is this meditation? What is this mindfulness? How can we get some? And so that what you have in that particular procedure is really outlined very closely in one of the suttas, sutta number 19 in the Middle Length Discourses, called the Two Kinds of Thinking. And it's a description in that sutta of the Buddha's own practice before his enlightenment. And he said, before my enlightenment, when I was an unenlightened bodhisattva, when I engaged in meditation, I decided to divide my thoughts into two categories. And watching the thought, I divided them into those that were wholesome and beneficial, those that conduced to well-being and peacefulness and clarity on the one side, and those that were conducive to agitation and confusion, conflict and difficulty on the other side. And those that were leading towards peace and clarity, then those were thoughts that I cultivated and followed, and those that were leading towards confusion and difficulty, conflict, then I deliberately let those go. So there's a discrimination there. The mind is open to the flow of thought, is attending, is aware of the flow of thinking that is there, but there's a deliberate choice. So recognizing, that's harmful, that's destructive, that's not reliable, that's not something that's meaningful or trustworthy, therefore let it go. And then the thoughts that were helpful and beneficial to sustain those and to maintain those in being. So this quality of, being discriminating and discerning in terms of the thoughts and opinions, attitudes that arise, I feel this is something that is incredibly helpful for us. This afternoon we had this question and answer session. There was this question about worry, anxiety, chronic anxiety. And so if you think of that, how much a difference it makes if the anxious thoughts that arise, the mind changes its attitude towards them, but these are not true. This is the mind says, this is a real problem and it's your responsibility to worry about it. It's like, well, is that so? Is that true? And who says this is a big problem? Yes, some work might need to be done or some responsibility might need to be followed through, but why does it have to be a problem? Why does it have to be something that causes stress? And who says that I have to be the one that's worrying about it, or that it's all my responsibility? And can this be seen in a different way? So that you can recognize that by changing the attitude towards thought and also emotion, as we were talking about earlier today, then we can make a radical difference in our lives. We can make a lot more space in our lives, effectively. And so that if we are recognizing the thought, it's just another sense object. We don't have to believe it, we don't have to make anything of it, we don't have to, take ownership of it, we don't have to wipe it out and get rid of it. Just as we can know the feeling of our body, the weight of our body on the cushion or the carpet, the sensation of the cloth on our skin, on our clothes, it's just this sensation, it's just these feelings, or the sound of the fans, it's just the sound. It's there, we perceive it, no big thing. We don't have to add anything to it. So similarly, with our thoughts, we don't have to make anything of them. It's just the mind creating conceptual thought. Most of what we think is completely beside the point. It's like repetitions of old conversations, or dialogues from movies, or memories of encounters with people, places that have been in the past, or plans for the future, repeated over and over. I've never done a precise count, but I suspect that 95% of what we think is kind of useless and not of any real value. About 5% of what we think during the course of a day is actually conceptual thought that has a purpose and is something that we need to use and employ to work with our day. So if we can change the way that the mind relates to thought, by not believing in it, not taking it personally, then we find that there's a lot more space in our day. If we can relate to our thoughts, like the sound of our thoughts, like the sound of the fans, it's not particularly intrusive. It's just there. It's just another sense object. And if we can change that attitude towards the thinking, then we can find a lot more, ease and comfort in our life. We find that our thoughts that are always worrying, always complaining, or always wanting, or opinionating, that we can shift the view, shift the attitude towards those, recognize, well, it's just the thinking mind, it likes to make judgments, it does that, but that's all right. no big thing. It's just that particular committee member has always got an opinion, even if they don't know what they're talking about. It's just how they are. So there's you're not having to wipe out thought, not saying the peace has to only come when there's no conceptual thinking in the mind, but rather the peace comes from the attitude towards it. Like if you say, I can only experience peace if there's total silence, therefore the fans have to go off and the air conditioner has to go off, everyone has to kind of not move a single millimeter, and then when there's total silence, then I can be peaceful. It's kind of ridiculous. We find that there can be the fans and the air conditioning and other noises going on, and we can be quite peaceful. It doesn't have to, our peace does not depend on an absence of stimulation, but really peace depends on the attitude that we have. Peace depends essentially on right view, right attitude, and that if there is that right attitude, but then whether there's thought or not, or whether it's something that is, meaningful or not meaningful, that thought doesn't have to be something that oppresses us, or it is something that is difficult to bear. So in terms of the development of Buddhist practice, this is developing the insights into anatta, the thoughts of not being owned, having no owner, and also that they are anicca, they are in a state of change, and they're uncertain, that the judgments that the mind makes. Isn't it interesting how, say for example, if you're hungry and you smell, say early in the morning, you come out of the morning meditation, and you're hungry for breakfast, and you open the door and go, breakfast, smells good. But then when you're full, you've already had your breakfast, you come out onto the stairwell and you smell exactly the same smell, you go, oh, the place really stinks of food. Open some windows and let the air through. It's the same smell, but when you're hungry, it smells good. When you're full, it doesn't smell good. So, is it a good smell or a bad smell? So, along with our thoughts being unreliable, those perceptions are unreliable too. We tend to invest in those and make them into apparently sort of solid, permanent objects. But just as I feel it's helpful to be suspicious of our own thoughts and not believe them too easily, also our perceptions and our judgments. Say, well, yeah, that's just, in this moment, this is something that's attractive, but it's not intrinsically attractive, it's just because it's having that effect on my mind in this moment. It's like the smell of the food. One moment is attractive, a little while later it's off-putting. So if you are a cigarette smoker, and then you want a cigarette, and then you walk past someone who's smoking, you go, ooh, yeah, I must have a smoke. And then it's something that is appealing and arouses interest. If you have been a smoker and you're trying to stop smoking, and you walk past someone who's smoking, why do they do that? It's really annoying. I'm trying to give that up. This is ruining my day. Right? You change the attitude and the same smell. One moment is something exciting and interesting, and says, yes, good. And then a little while later, because of a change of attitude, it's exactly the same smell, and the mind assesses it in a different way. And all of us can sort of fill in the blanks with that, with food or with a friend. Is someone that you are, it was a friend and you were always pleased to see them, and then they've asked to borrow a large amount of money from you. And it's very difficult because you don't know what to do with them. And then, so the same friend comes in the room a week before they asked you to borrow the money. Oh, hi, good to see you, how are you? How's life? Happy to see them. And then after they've asked you for a loan, oh no, it's him again. Right? So perceptions are unreliable, they're uncertain. And so if we are wise, we'll reflect on that. Our judgments, the way we look at ourselves, the way we look at others, the way we look at life and objects, that we give them value. We say, this is attractive, this is impressive, or this is really off-putting or ugly. So much of that is subjective. But if we're not wise, we assume that the beauty or the attractiveness or the goodness or the badness is in the object, instead of recognizing this is what my mind is adding to it. So the more that we are able to develop the practice and see the value in that, then I would say that the more that we are going to be inclined to developing consciously that sense of challenging those values and saying, well, the mind calls this good or the mind calls this bad. Noticing that, say, well, it's not a sure thing. It's not certain. Also, our sense of authority about and memory, the way that we. Well, I remember I was there. I can tell you, I know how it was. I was there. Our memories, things that we are often relying upon or taken to be very dependable. The mind can remember things in particular ways and be sure, yeah, I know what happened. I was there. I remember. But that is also something that is not dependable. Back in 1983. I made a very windy walk through England from our monastery, Chittaviveka Monastery in West Sussex. I walked all the way to a new branch monastery up near the Scottish border called Anand Vihara. So it was a very long and windy route, so it went about 830 miles, so about 1,1200 kilometers through the English countryside. And it was very wonderful and interesting to do. It took about 3 months to walk from Sussex to Northumberland, and had many wonderful memories from that. And then about 25 years later, the man that I walked with, Nick Scott, he suggested that we go and revisit some of the people and places that we went to on that first walk just to meet, have a good reason to meet people again. I'd been living away in the States for a long time, and a good chance for us to go for a bit of a walk together and revisit these places and see how life has moved on for many of these friends that we encountered. And the reason why I mention this is that it was one of the most striking things was that every place that I remembered that we revisited, it was completely different from what I remembered. So say, for example, the first layperson's house that we went to, a woman called Nye Thompson, I remember that they had this big house called Squire's Hill, and it was in this little village called Tilford. Tilford has a village green, where they play cricket, and church by the village green. And her house, there was a driveway off the village green, kind of up a hill, and the house was on top of this little hill. We get to Tilford, there's the village green. Where's her driveway? Say, oh, well, and you find where it's on the map is half a mile outside the village. No. It's not, I remember. The driveway goes off the village green, and this little hill, I remember it. It's there in my memory, but then when we're actually on the ground, it's like, no, it wasn't that way. It's actually half a mile outside the village, and then there's the driveway, and on top is the house. Oh, that's interesting. But my memories have been quite clear of how it sat. A little while later, we went to this church, St. Martha's on the Hill. It's the only church in England dedicated to St. Martha. And I had this clear memory of the church sitting on the hilltop and being outside the main door of the church and looking out over the southern English landscape. We get out there and the whole church has been rotated 90 degrees. The main door of the church didn't face to the south, it was facing to the east. But I remember, we sat in the church porch and we could look out over the downs, and there they were. No, I didn't. And so, I won't bore you with all the details, but as we went along, we went to maybe about 8 places that we revisited, and every single one was not as I remembered. I'm known as being somebody with a good memory. It was kind of startling at first, but then as we went along, I thought, okay, what's going to happen this time? You find, there's this little village in Yorkshire. There was the post office with the big chestnut tree, and there was a copper beech tree, not chestnut. There was a big copper beech tree, and they moved this 300-year-old copper beech tree across the road. It used to be in front of the post office, and now it was the other side of the road. So that was really a lesson I didn't expect to learn from that experience, is that sanya anicca, perceptions are unreliable, perceptions are uncertain, sankhara anicca, mental formations are uncertain, are unreliable. Now, when we take refuge in our opinions, or in our thoughts, or in our memories, and I know I'm right, I've got this, the reasoning behind why this is good and that's bad, and it was this way. We, as human beings, we easily take hold of our judgments, our opinions, our memories, our ideas, and we take them to be absolute facts. Then, if we do that, then we tend to create a lot of conflict between ourselves and others. And when I first showed up at the monastery in northeast Thailand in 1978, I had no experience of Buddhist meditation or Buddhist ideas really when I showed up there. And I couldn't understand why the monks and novices kept talking about, well, that's just views and opinions, or that's just an opinion, or that's just your views. And I would say, no, it's not a view, it's a fact. I say, yeah, well, it's your view that it's a fact. Come on, this is just stupid sophistry. It's a fact. I say, yeah, it's your opinion that it's a fact. And so I find it annoying at first. This is this kind of weird Buddhist habit of talking about views and opinions. And I never really related to that idea or the concept of views and opinions in that kind of way. It's just what I think is true, if other people think differently, they're wrong. I can explain to them how they're wrong. Because if it's my mind, what I think, it's right, because I'm always right. That's the kind of conceited views that we have as human beings. And then I realized so after I'd been there about a month or 6 weeks, that something that I had been sure of when I arrived, I now saw differently. 6 weeks later, I saw differently, and I thought, well, 6 weeks ago that was right. Now, 6 weeks later, that is right. So what does that say about my rightness then? What does that say about my rightness now? That's what they mean about views and opinions. That they are unreliable. They're just things that the mind likes to attach to. So it's not. I'm not suggesting being wishy-washy or not ever making decisions or taking initiative around things. But if we are able to develop a more reflective attitude towards our own memories, our ideas, our perceptions, our opinions, and to know that, and to recognize that, well, this can only be a point of view, or this is something that is not 100% reliable, then we don't take refuge in it in the same way. We recognize, well, this is a convenient truth, or a convenient fiction. It's not an absolute truth. It's just a way of speaking. So one of the Buddha's teachings on this area, which is very, very helpful, is yena hi manyanti tatatang hoti anyatati. Whatever you conceive it to be, the fact is always other than that. So essentially, no concept or thought can match the reality. Absolutely. Every thought can only be an approximation. It's a convenient fiction. It's just like say, today is Friday. Yeah, well, it's Friday here, but in New Zealand it's probably Saturday already. It's 8:44 in the evening in India, so Australia and New Zealand, it's already Saturday. So what day is it? So we are changing the view of perceptions, thoughts, opinions, and views and such like. And so this is a very helpful way of changing the attitude, making our attitude more spacious, and to create causes for non-conflict between ourselves and others. Because if we can recognize our own opinions, well, that's just how my mind likes to look at it. Then, if we're doing that with this mind, then we're more able to do it with other people's minds. Oh, that's just something that she likes, or that's just something that she dislikes. That's the way that he likes to think about things. That's the way he likes to complain about things. And it's all given a lot more psychological space, and so that we find that we're much more able to get along with people, and to, rather than defending your position and defining other people as wrong, or that you approve of them or you don't approve of them, rather you're able to respect that what we experience is not the world, but my mind's version of the world. And when the Buddha was defining what he means by the world, loka, he said, that whereby one is a perceiver of the world and a conceiver of the world, that is what is called the world in this Dhammārāma discipline. And what is it whereby one is a perceiver of the world and a conceiver of the world? The eye, the ear, the nose, the tongue, the body, the mind. That is the means whereby one is a perceiver and a conceiver of the world. So the world is the world of our own experience. We can't meaningfully talk about a world outside our own experience. So throughout our lives, ever since we were born, or before we were born even, the only world we've known is the world through our sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, memory, thought, language, imagination. That's the world. That's the only way we can experience the world. It's the only world we have known. So even if you say, oh yeah, but you've got devices that can measure, you can record, but it's your mind that's looking at the device, it's your mind that's reading the numbers or discerning the information coming from that recorder device, that machine. But when we shift our view in this way, and it's a conscious cultivation of the recognition of uncertainty, the anicca sanya. And so in Buddhist practice, this is often called the gateway to wisdom, the way, the most effective and direct way to cultivate wisdom. So you might think, well, I don't want to be more uncertain, I'm anxious enough already, I'm insecure. I want certainty, I want insurance, I want things to be predictable. Well, that's, I would say, self-view talking. And that if we are wise or recognize whether we want things to be predictable or not, essentially they are unpredictable. But no matter how much you try to pin things down, you want to make things secure and fixed and reliable. The way the world works is that it's continually unreliable, it's unfixed, it's unpredictable. So by cultivating the anicca sanya, you're tuning your heart to the way that things actually are, not as an opinion, but as a quality of nature, a quality of the natural order. So even though that might be challenging to the ego, to the self-view, don't say that. Don't remind me that everything's uncertain. The ego might be challenged, but the heart itself, the citta, goes, of course it's uncertain. How could it be otherwise? So there's a sense of realism, a sense of a heart being in tune with reality. So a simple way to develop this, and our teacher, Ajahn was a genius at coming up with very direct, simple forms of practice, is to be mindful of the judgments that are made within us, the opinions that we have. When we call something good or bad, beautiful or ugly, call something mine or yours. Whenever the mind makes a judgment, to be aware of that, to see that the judgment, the opinion is being made, and to challenge it, essentially to ask the question, is that so? Jingba, in the Thai language, yeah. Is that so? Is that a fact? Really? And what happens within the heart when that is done? They say, this is really good. Is that so? When that question is asked, when that challenge is made, something in the heart recognizes, oh yeah, of course. It's uncertain. We don't know what's going to happen next. It is uncertain. And there's that sense of realism and relief as a quality of ease. And so that it takes an effort to keep applying that recollection. Is that so? Is that a sure thing? This is a great retreat. Is that a sure thing? This is a waste of a weekend. Is that a sure thing? I'm really happy. Is that a sure thing? I'm really miserable. Is that a sure thing? I understand everything he says. Is that a sure thing? I don't understand anything he's saying. Is that a sure thing? And that it takes, as I said, it takes effort to keep applying that. But if you look, you realize every time that is applied in a sincere and direct way, there is that quality of relaxation, there's a de-stressing, a de-tensing, there's a disentangling of the mind with the perceptions, the feelings and thoughts that we experience. So I strongly encourage this, this development of the anicca sanyas, not just seeing that everything is changing, but in a way, anicca is most often translated as the quality of change. Things are in a state of transition. And that's true, about the material world or the mental world. Thoughts change, feelings change, sensations change, ideas change. The material world is constantly changing. All the every atom molecule is vibrating, things are transforming. But in a way, talking about anicca just as change is a quality of that as a sort of as an object. on the subject side, the felt sense, what happens in the heart when it meets that quality of change is that I don't know what's going to happen next. So that on the subject side, anicca the quality of anicca is experienced as uncertainty. So the transiency refers to it as an objective quality, uncertainty as a subjective quality. That's not too technical. So that the felt sense of change is uncertainty. We don't know what's going to happen next. It's not a sure thing. And when that is developed, then it's why it's called the gateway to wisdom, or the Ajahn would say, this is the standard of the noble ones, because in that moment the heart is recognizing how life actually is. It's not known what it's going to change into. So there's a fundamental realism there, and that there's no longer an investment in, it's going to be this way, either hope or fear, but rather it's not a sure thing. It's not, nothing is fixed, nothing is certain. Therefore, the heart does not invest in an object, in a mind state, in a word or idea or a social role or anything of that nature. Because it's not secure, it's not stable, the mind doesn't take hold of it as a refuge, something valuable and meaningful. It doesn't make that kind of, it doesn't get born into it, as people say. So that when the mind is then not drawn into mind states or objects or people or events or roles in society, then it is creating the causes for genuine freedom, genuine peacefulness. So that it's a simple mode of practice, but one that brings great rewards. So during this weekend and then our time together, I would encourage that way of challenging and just first of all noticing how many opinions and judgments we make during the course of the day, approving, disapproving, liking, disliking, say this is mine, that's not mine. To catch that, to notice it, to challenge it, and to see the results of that challenge. Just what effect does that have upon your heart, your mind, when there is that, oh yeah, of course, it's not a sure thing. Yeah. I say during this weekend, will we be together tomorrow? Who knows? There's a thunder and lightning this evening. This wonderful new building, Dhammārāma, could be hit by a colossal lightning bolt. Kapoom! You could be sitting in a pile of rubble tomorrow. Not that I want that to happen. It's not a sure thing that this wonderful, fine building will still be here tomorrow, or even later tonight. It's not sure. So again, that's threatening to the ego, but also, if you notice that, oh yeah, right, of course, it's liberating to the heart. We can address that question tomorrow. I think I'll leave it there for this evening. Of these thoughts for consideration.
Andamaram Dhamma Kataya Sadhukaram Dadamase
So pursuing the reflections, the theme of reflection on anicca, the anicca sanya, we can recite these 5 subjects for frequent recollection, and it's found on page 44. And this is a mixture of Pali and English together. Andamayang Bhenapachwe Kanatatam Banamase Jara Dhammo Mijaram Nanadito. I am of nature to age, I am not gone beyond aging. Maya Didammo Nivaya Dinganatito. I am of the nature to sicken, I have not gone beyond sickness. Maranadhammo mi maranam anatito. I am of the nature to die, I have not gone beyond dying. Sabbe me biye innabe inana bhavo vinabhavo. All that is mine, beloved and pleasing, will become otherwise, will become separated from me. Kama sakomika manayado kamayonika mahanduka mahatisano yangama karisani kalayana vapapakamba tasadayado vavisami. I am the owner of my karma, heir to my karma, born of my karma, related to my karma, otherwise supported by my karma. Whatever karma I shall do, for good or for ill, of that I will be the heir. Evam amhehi abhinna vachavekitavam. Thus we should frequently recollect. And then the final closing homage is to be found on page 19. 26. The Lord, the perfectly enlightened and blessed One, I render homage to the Buddha, the Blessed One. The teachings overwhelmingly explained by him, I bow to the Dhammārāma. Blessed One's disciples who have practiced well, I bow to the Sangha.